This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, my guest this week has so much to share that his interview runs a little longer than usual. To offset that, I'm going to make today's intro a little shorter than usual and simply tell you that this could be the very first time ever I've brought on a seasoned, talented guest before he's even opened his very first unit. But that's only because Boomers Parks is not Tim Murphy's first rodeo. No, Tim has played in the big leagues of restaurant franchising, both on the multi-unit franchisee side as well as in C-suites of some pretty high-profile franchisors. Today, as CEO of Boomers Parks, Tim is placing a completely different spin on food and beverage, restaurant management, and on franchised family entertainment centers. There's a ton of take-home value in this conversation, and we'll kick it all off in 2 minutes or less when I return with Tim Murphy. This is Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman. Don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
We are all familiar with Vistage, YPO, and EO. Well, now comes Zor Forum, a somewhat similar type of executive group, but this one comes with a twist. Zor Forum groups are exclusively for franchisors. Imagine a peer group for sharing and networking on a platform built exclusively for franchise executives. Zor Forum members are afforded unparalleled access to best practices and some of the brightest minds within the franchising world through regular meetings and a dedicated communications platform. In this post-COVID world, a franchise-specific mastermind or peer group is an endeavor worth making time for. Zor Forum groups of 6 to 10 will bring leaders together that are in similar situations, but with exclusivity in terms of their competitive sets, so that each can openly help others benefit from their respective knowledge, perspective, and experience with no fear of competitive loss. Network, learn, strategize, and remain motivated along your journey. Join a peer group, not just any peer group. Join the only one designed for emerging franchisors. Join Zor Forum. Learn more at zorforum.com. That's www.zorforum.com. Tim Murphy is no stranger to entrepreneurial and strategic C-level executive and board of director positions. With 30-plus years of leadership creating strong teams and cultures to improve performance and turn companies around that were in need of significant growth, cost savings, and innovation, Tim has been president, COO, CFO, or advisor to C-suite executives across more than 150 brands, representing some 10,000-plus locations across hospitality, restaurants, entertainment, food and beverage, and specialty retail. He's here today to tell us all about his latest project, Boomers Parks. Tim Murphy, welcome to Franchise Today.
Thank you for having me, Stan.
It's a pleasure getting to know a little bit about you in preparation for our conversation today. And I'm scratching my head, as I sometimes do, Tim, when I learn that you and I share 1,002 first-tier connections on LinkedIn, and we haven't somehow or another bumped into each other yet. So go figure that out.
Yeah, that happens, doesn't it? We all have our lives doing lots of different things, and you just never know when you're going to meet. But hey, here we are.
Here we are today, and it's an exciting kind of conversation to have because I love stories about people who turn lemons into lemonade. And if there's anything I've learned about you in my reading and studying for today, it's that you kind of do that naturally in your sleep, don't you?
It seems like it. The mind's always working.
Well, on your LinkedIn profile, you call yourself a company turnaround specialist. And so we're going to learn about all that and unpack it all as we get through this conversation today. But what we must do first is what I do each and every week, which is ask my guests to wind back the tape and take us back to that inflection point in time when franchising found you and what it was you were doing, when that was, and what it looked like. So take us back to that story, Tim, if you would.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess my first real exposure to franchising was with Denny's when I was at Denny's corporate in Spartanburg, South Carolina. That's what it is today. It used to be Flagstar, then Advanica, now Denny's Inc. today. But we had Denny's, Polo Loco, Coco's, Caro's, Mother Butler Pies, Winchell Donuts, Hardee's, largest franchisee of Hardee's, Quincy's, a couple of little small little steak places. End up being quite a group of restaurants that were franchised. But I think where I really got my opportunity in franchising or really understand it the best was when I was mentored and by the former Applebee's CEO and chairman, Abe Gustin Jr., who's passed away, unfortunately, from stroke, I guess, about 10, 12 years now, maybe 13 years now. But he was a great mentor for 4 years in Central Florida after he retired. This is a gentleman that built Applebee's from 52 units, bought it from W.R. Grace with a partner, moved it to Kansas City. It's now in Southern California, retired with over 1,300 restaurants, building 100 Applebee's franchise restaurants on an annual basis.
And how did you wind up under his wing?
They needed a CFO in their Applebee's location here in Central Florida. We had ultimately having with the other restaurants we had in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, we had 20 some odd, but it was building the Applebee's and they needed a CFO. He was our money guy. He was our chairman of the little Applebee's after he retired here in Central Florida. But I'm also a commercial real estate broker in the state of Florida. So he and I would get behind a windshield and go look for dirt, being the commercial real estate broker, and then ultimately hiring the GCs, finding the money as the CFO and turning it over to the GCs to build and finally turning over to operations. But they needed some help. I worked with him and his two sons, one from the first marriage, one from the second marriage, and that was very interesting. But we built several Applebee's here in Central Florida, as well as we had Green Hills Grills in Alabama and Tennessee, and investment arrays on the river, which Ray Schoenbaum of Shoney's in downtown Atlanta.
So yours is a storied career in food and beverage as well as in franchising, but that was your first toe into the water in franchising. How many years in your profession were you when franchising tapped you on the shoulder?
Oh, well, if I go back to the Denny's time frame, so we're going back to, I'm about 26, 27 years in franchising.
But you were in food and hospitality before that, correct?
That's correct, yes. Actually starting out with my family's small miniature golf, arcade, and restaurant in New Jersey, selling that off. And my parents moved down to Orlando, and I started to work for Epcot Center when it first opened. So I worked at Walt Disney World, helping open up Epcot Center at 16 while still in high school, and then stayed in foods for quite a while, working for the Darden brands and several other brands, 150 brands and 10,000 locations over my career, which was just eye-opening when you look at all the different types of brands to work for. But yeah, food, finally into franchising, ultimately entertainment in franchising.
And in your capacity, were you working both on the corporate franchisor side as well as working for operating groups that owned the franchising?
Yes, I did. So not only as an Applebee's franchisee for the Central Florida franchise, we had the Sonny's Rib Barbecue, where I worked at corporate as a CFO for them. Same thing, commercial real estate broker in charge of real estate, finding the money, finding the dirt, and working on operations, as well as being the CFO. But yeah, I've worked franchisor several times and franchisee quite a bit, and helping operators make their franchises just a bit better.
So today you fit the quintessential description of something that we affectionately call a mumbo. Have you heard that term?
Stan, I have not. A mumbo, okay.
More people aspire to become a mumbo in today's world than ever before. Mumbo is an acronym for multi-unit, multi-brand operator. Okay. And that's what we see the largest sector in franchising today. They are comprised of mumbos. They're people who built out a brand in a territory with an area development agreement. They're out of real estate, perhaps, within their specific geography, and they're looking for other brands that they can acquire that won't put them into conflict with their existing covenants not to compete, and cross-train and bring people in from other parts of their business that can serve the whole enterprise in a much better way. You're not actually operating as a Z anymore, but you were the early days of what mumbos are today.
I guess I was. That's a fair statement, Stan.
So you've been in the family entertainment business for quite a long time. Tell us about your growing up years. I've kind of learned a little through a clip I watched about you, and learned a lot about your affinity and affection for your parents and your dad as an entrepreneur. You want to talk about some of that?
Sure. Well, I mean, if I was going to spend time with my parents, I had to be with them in one of their businesses. So dad was definitely an entrepreneur. He had a 10th grade education education. Mom did have a high school education, but together they worked together as a great team. Dad was always willing to do something. He was in fence businesses and saw businesses, welding, construction. But then he got together with his father, who was a master craftsman, and built a miniature golf course in their backyard during the winter, placed it in the summer, and then opened up what was called the Spirit of 76 for the bicentennial, United States bicentennial. And so I worked either with my mother at once the miniature golf arcade and restaurant was open, the Spirit of 76. I worked with her during the summer. And then when I wasn't working with her, I was working with Dad, putting up fences or even sweeping floors and construction, working on buildings at houses that he would build, and just always been in that entrepreneurial environment of, hey, we're gonna make something out of something. And Dad was always a hard worker. I'll say that about him. Even though he had a 10th grade education, this guy never gave up on his family, that's for sure, and was always working on something. So I spent some of the best times and best years of my life working with him and my mom too at the Spirit of 76 before they ultimately sold their businesses and moved to Florida. One little side thing. When I went to Florida, I worked at Epcot Center. But prior to that, my parents had opened up greenhouses, 14 greenhouses, which was the equivalency of planted 35 acres in the wintertime in New Jersey, growing Jersey tomatoes and hydroponics before Epcot ever opened. So we were kind of doing what you do at Epcot at the Land Pavilion before it ever opened. So it's quite unique to go down to Epcot, start working there and go, I know this stuff. This is pretty cool. Dad did it.
That's great. Great background and certainly great preparation for the career that you've chosen to embark upon as an entrepreneur. And so your view has been of franchising and food from on high, actually. I mean, when you're working as a CFO for corporations like a Sonny's or these large brands, you're seeing things from a much different perspective than most of the people in this audience. But whether you're doing what they do as the emerging brands or whether you're doing what you do in corporate with hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, there are some core things that are the same, are they not, that you might share out about how they can achieve the greatness to become the best version of themselves, doing the very same things that it took to grow some of these companies that you've worked for to the size that they are. What would you share with this audience about core values?
It's very critical to have what you believe in, your core values, and everyone's on par with that, which is what we've put into our Boomers Parks today. But going back to those time frames, you always have mentors, right? There's always somebody that really stands out in your mind that, hey, that was the best way of doing something, or you work for someone that said, hey, that was the worst way of doing something. So I do have two of those experiences. Working for Abe Gustin, a great mentor of mine with Applebee's, was always about taking care of the franchisees, making them successful, doing everything he could do. I mean, this is a gentleman that built 100 Applebee's a year for 10 years straight. Amazing feat of what he did, but he did everything he could do to make those franchisees successful. From the conventions, of course, but really showing them how can they make more money with their food products, how they created new products. I mean, the riblet was really by Abe. He went to a meat packing facility with ribs and then saw that they're cutting off the portion of the sternum of the pigs and said, there's meat on that bone. Why can't we do something with it? And hence he took that back and he was able to buy those pieces to create the riblets for Applebee's. So just an amazing entrepreneur in that respect. But he looked at how to create things for his franchisees become successful. I'm not here to criticize another brand that I work for under as a franchisor, but they were not about their franchisees. They didn't help their franchisees. They just wanted that money up front. They want the franchise fee and the royalty and said, this is how we're going to make money, and didn't care what it was going to do to that franchisee. But what I always took from working with them is, what can I do to support the franchisee after learning the great experiences with Abe Gustin at Applebee's, how to create the right marketing, how to create the right IT, the infrastructure, what point of sales do you use? How can I help them to be more successful? What little things can I do to make them more successful? Because that's ultimately what's going to make the franchisor that much more successful. And I did implement a lot of those items and initiatives, food cost systems that we put in it. One of the brands, the one I won't name, that didn't care about their franchisees that much. But the bottom line is, the more that you did, the more the franchisees saw what you were doing and they were willing to buy into any of the changes you did. When you just try to force things down someone's throat from a franchisor to a franchisee without really showing them the why and the how and how it's going to benefit them, then you're not going to be successful. That really comes back to the overall core values of what you believe in. It's an honesty, it's integrity, being transparent with those franchisees. And those are some of the the same core values we have today as part of our overall team with Boomers today. But you learn from those experiences from what I believe some of the best mentors, and you want to emulate what they did. Even if it's a fraction of what they did, you still want to emulate and make those franchisees successful. Does that answer your question, Stan?
It certainly does. And how much of that did you pick up even before franchising, working for the number of years you did in the Walt Disney organization?
Oh, my goodness. Disney is all about culture. So really believing in the guest is first. You take care of team members. People are included. Everyone's invited to the party, so to speak. Yeah, everyone's there, whether they're team members or guests. And you always try to take care of the guests. And we always hear in the expression is guest is always first. Yeah, that's true. And within reason, you don't want them to take everything away from you. But the bottom line is when you really give a great experience to somebody, they remember that. How do you make them feel special? So those are some of the things I take from Disney in culture is how do we make the guests first? One of the greatest things I think everyone has to be indoctrinated whenever they go through. I worked at Walt Disney World here in Orlando, and whether you're at Disneyland, I know friends that are from Disneyland, similar indoctrination where you're going to learn a lot about how Walt Disney wanted to treat his guests. They weren't customers, they were guests. Like someone came over to your house and you're sitting them down and you're going to offer them a cold drink or you're going to offer them some food or make sure that they feel comfortable. And that's what you want to be able to do with your guests when they come into your parks or your restaurants. They're guests, they're not customers. And you get to get that vocabulary out of your head immediately. And I'll even take it a step further in a moment. The same thing with your employees. Your employees are not employees. They're your team. They're your team members. These are things you have to remember. And Disney took it a step further and said, no, they're not really our team. They are our cast members. And what does that mean? Well, cast members, you think about this, Disney was big into movies and so forth. You're going on stage, performing. When you're performing, you might be scripted. You might say certain things a certain way, but you're there with a smile on your face or whatever the situation might be. And you're there acting. So you're a cast member. Everyone that's here in Orlando at Walt Disney World is a cast member, and they're going on stage. I taught that to my team going, when you leave the back of the house, you're forgetting your cares and your worries about your world. Put them away. You may have had a flat tire coming in or maybe a disagreement with a family member or you're going through a divorce or whatever it might be, but you forget all about that and you're performing for our guests to give them the best experience possible when you come into the park. So Disney was the same way. So at Walt Disney World, you're performing because someone came there. Yes, they want to see everything Disney has, but they're escaping from their world for a period of time. It's an all day, a couple hours, whatever it might be. And if you're creating an escape, you want them to feel great about why they're there. And you also uplift your team members to make sure that they're on board with it. Of course, you're worried about your team members and taking care of them too. But ultimately, we know it's the guests that take care of us. So at Walt Disney World, there are invaluable lessons that you'll never forget on how you take care of the guest, that you're a cast member, that you're better in our world, team member. You're part of a team. You're not an employee. You're not just a number. You're someone that's special, that's there to help other people.
Well said, and that's more than a nugget. I asked for a nugget, and you gave us the whole gold mine. I think that was a terrific explanation. We're going to take a quick break here, Tim, and when we come back, we want to talk a little more about the current day and what's brought you and Boomers to the world of franchising now, yet as a franchisor on your own merits. We're talking today with Tim Murphy, CEO of Boomers Parks, family entertainment centers, but with a different twist demographically, and we're going to talk some about that when we come back. Don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And the conversation continues with Tim Murphy, CEO of Boomers Parks. Let's talk a little about what Boomers is and how you got yourself back into the family entertainment business.
Sure. Well, actually, it started with the restaurant industry. A friend of mine that I worked with when I was at Applebee's said, I got a buddy that needs some help. He was a franchisor of trampoline parks. And could you talk to him and see if you could help him out? Because he ultimately would probably like to sell this somewhere down the road. So I met him, and quickly the founder said, hey, why don't you become the CEO and president of the company for me and see if we can't grow this a little bit more as a franchisor. And what I found with our trampoline parks, we were small compared to a lot of large franchises out there, say Sky Zone, Rock and Jump, Circus Tricks, and others, Launch and so forth, and Urban Air. But what we found is our value is in our patents. And so ultimately, we were able to sell the company for the patent valuation because, frankly, everyone in the industry that had a trampoline park was using our patents or our claims that we had on the patents that we had. So I ended up suing a very large private equity firm, and I had over 270 locations, but that helped me sell the company. So it's back in your blood a little bit. But what do we have in those parks? I mean, yes, we were a trampoline park. We had ninja warrior courses, arcades, restaurant, party rooms, high jumps on the trampoline airbags. So it was kind of a fun place, but it was a younger demographic. And that younger demographic I would say predominantly was 2 to 12-year-olds. When you get into a market that's 2 to 12-year-olds, you don't really have a top line much more that you can grow than say $1 to maybe $5 million annually in the trampoline markets. It just, people don't go there. So there's not really a high end. The adults don't go there. Teenagers really don't go there. Young adults don't go there. So anyway, help the company sell. And a side tangent, I also helped another company, a private equity firm in South America, buy 100 family entertainment centers and amusement parks in Colombia, Peru, and Chile, helped them get kind of on their path. And then I joined their board in September 2019. And then lo and behold, here I am. Cerberus Private Equity reached out and said, hey, Tim, would you take a look at what we have? There were 16 parks, 2 amusement parks, 2 water parks, and 12 family entertainment centers. And they asked me, can you just make an assessment of what we've got? We lent money to the previous private equity firm. They didn't pay their bill, and we're looking to potentially foreclose on them and take the properties back possibly. Sure, I looked at them and I said, you know what? You got the wrong demographics here. They're focused on 2 to 12-year-olds, just like I was with trampoline parks. But really, your guests are tweens, teens, young adults, and corporations. I said, we're not marketing this correctly. We're not providing the proper foods. We don't have the proper things there. We're bringing in higher demographic that's older. We need to give them the things that they need. So look at your demographics is one of the first things I've done consulting over my career as well. And what are the demographics we're serving? So at the end of the day, we determined that, hey, the demographics need to change and we need to refocus a lot of our business. The food, liquor, beer, and wine, the attractions, extending the length of stay in our parks. And that's one of the key factors that turned around our business. So I work for Cerberus Private Equity in North America. I work for the Carlyle Group in South America as a board director for 100 family entertainment centers. But in the United States, I have 6 family entertainment centers and 2 water parks left of the 16. I suggested which ones to close or sell. And what we have now are 5 family entertainment centers in California, 1 in Boca Raton, which is our corporate address. I have a water park in Destin, Florida, which is the Panhandle. And then we have a water park that's indoors in New Jersey as well, right off the state line from Philadelphia and Camden Cherryville area.
Your acquisition of this organization was in what year?
Yeah, I took over during the pandemic, June 2020. I was analyzing them from December 2019 all the way through the bankruptcy. And lo and behold, we have the pandemic in the middle of that.
So what thought ran through your mind?
Wow, what a challenge. Who knows what's going to happen? How long will we be closed? We had absolutely no idea when we took over. It ended up being a stalking horse bid. For those that don't understand what a stalking horse bid is, there was no other bidders. What we were putting up the auction for buying the locations out of bankruptcy was for the debt. So that was what our offer was, and no one bid on it during the pandemic. So I'm taking over a company that has 1 park open, just opened in Florida, water park for 3 days. It had been closed since the previous year, but then every other park was closed. Little by little, we opened them all up, and then we closed them all down again pretty much. So we opened and closed 4 times all the way until the week after Thanksgiving 2020, when I had to lay off 85 to 90% of my workforce and did not reopen until March 21. But what happened during that time frame, we were off to the races, meaning we just had great record sales. We turned around the company During the downtime when we were closed, I had managers and other people working on things to fix up the parks. One thing I learned in the restaurant industry was that the number one thing you got to take care of first, there's a lot of things to do when I took over this company, but remodel the bathrooms, because mom makes a decision on whether to stay or go. And we found that out in the restaurant industry. And if those bathrooms are dirty, they're thinking the rest of your place is dirty. So one of the first things we did was remodel the bathrooms as well as fix a lot of these properties. I've spent over $14 million fixing these companies. And that was during, as I said, when I started, it was during the middle of the pandemic. One park opened for 3 days. But then once we got into 2021, we were off to the races, and we've been very successful ever since. So what it taught us about our business is we know how to market farm town, a suburbia, city, tourist area. We know how to bring people in. And that's what we learned through this whole process. And each day we keep strengthening that, increasing our check average in all the parks, increasing attendance, and of course, increasing revenue, which ultimately, as long as you control costs, especially during an inflationary period, you throw a lot more profit to the bottom line.
Did you second guess yourself at all when COVID hit?
Did I second guess it? No, I was confident that I would get through it. But there were some times when you got to say to yourself, all right, I just laid off 85% of the workforce. I'm still breathing and I'm still getting paid today. So I'm going to continue to work hard every day, but you have to do it with a smile. That is the biggest thing that you've got to do to your team members in good and bad information. One thing I believe in is transparency. It's part of our core values, understanding what you believe in. And what I believed in was honesty, integrity, and transparency, letting my team know what's going on, letting my team understand that there's going to be good times and bad times. So I always explain the good and the bad, but I keep it in the same positive mode with as much of a smile on my face as I can, even though it's as stressful as possible, especially working for a private equity firm, because they're very into, hey, we got to do things, we got to make things happen. When you don't have any revenue come through, it's kind of tough. They understand that part, but when it starts opening back up, you got to really be moving and you got to have a plan in place. So did I have sleepless nights? No, I would say I slept soundly, but I worked a lot at the end of the day, Stan.
Well, I asked these questions because I opened this episode talking about how you were played on much larger playing fields than many in this audience. But as we're hearing, the rules of engagement are not much different, are they?
No, they're not. No. I mean, you've got to have something that you believe in. To me, it's culture, core values. And core values is what makes the difference. We know working for private equity, we have to have profitable sales growth. We have to be innovative risk takers. We need to do certain things, but we also need to take care of the guest. We also need to take care of the team member. We need to be honest. We need to make sure we have something to do with the community. So that's giving back with social responsibility when and where you can, especially after the pandemic. There's so many people that need help, and we support a lot of charities and we do a lot of work that way. But we also have partners. That's our vendors. That's people that we work with in the areas that we're in. You need to be able to say, hey, this is what we believe in, and we got to get the team on board. When I took over this company, there were 16 parks originally. We closed some down and we sold off one, but at the end of the day, we have 8. And at the end of that, they all ran separately, meaning there was no real control. We got to get everyone on the same page that says this is what we believe in and why we believe in it. When you get the right people on the bus with you that believe in what you believe in, there's nothing that you can't do. And that's what this team has done for me.
Well, let's extend that to the next level now that we're franchising. And let's talk about what it is that you're going to be able to do to transfer to your franchisees that vision for core values in today's world where employment has become a major problem post-COVID, with a lot of people just choosing not to go back to work. What are you going to do?
Sure. Yeah, great question, Stan. So, things that we can do in discussing this with ultimately future franchisees is, one, we have a confidence level first that we know we can earn profits. When I was in the restaurant industry, and I'll go back and completely answer your question, Stan, but when I was in the restaurant industry, we thought that restaurants were profits made between 5 to 20% before corporate G&A. That's, everything from quick service, fast casual to casual dining. Of course, there's a few outliers that maybe they'll get the 25% profit, but very few. What we've seen in the family entertainment centers is the higher profitability that's in a family entertainment center. Yes, you're still selling food. Yes, we have full bars, liquor, beer, and wine, and you can control that pretty well. But the flow through is much better because you're selling time. So first off, taking the initiative saying you got 2 different business models out there, and to me, this is a better business model. As an example, example, my Boca Raton location does 45 to 50% profit for every dollar taken in because we're selling more time. So one thing we can say with confidence that we know how to market them, we know how to bring them in, and we know that we can show a potential franchisee this is a profitable business. Now, getting back to the employee side of things and how do we handle team members is having a confident level that says, look, bringing in a culture like this, that we do a promote from within culture. We've created manager universities for our Boomers University. We've done this now with supervisors. We're doing this with specialty individuals. You have arcade technician, very hard to find, so you can teach people. We have an apprenticeship program. We can show people how they can grow within a business. When I first took over the company and I got to go out and meet different team members and managers and so forth, I found people being in our business for, 20, 25 years. I had one park manager that was with our company for 17 years, starting as a ride operator, putting people in go-karts, and now she's the park manager, which is what we would say equivalency of a general manager. And then we have assistant park managers that support them in different roles, whether it's food and beverage or it's operations. And so with it, we saw that there was a lack or a career plan for these team members. When you share that you've got the best interests for these individuals coming out, they're looking to participate. Gen Zs and millennials are looking to participate, would like to share their thoughts and opinions, which they're all valid. We need to listen to them. There's great ideas. I go out there all the time and meet with team members, but you've got to be willing to sit down, listen to them, and not just disqualify that says, yeah, we tried that before, we're not going to do it. No, you need to think about it and say, is this important to them? So what we found was important to our team members was we give away free food, free snacks for our team members. We give away free play. So they can go in the arcades, they go on the attractions, they can do different things. We want them to feel like they're really welcomed and valued to our facility. In addition, we also reward for good behavior. Things that goes above and beyond, not just show up, but say, hey, we have what's called a Nectar program, which is just a rewards benefit program that gives out gift cards and prizes and things like that. The more points you accumulate for doing above and beyond, where you help out, someone called in and now you're willing to fill in for that person. So you helped out in an event or a party when you weren't expected to do that. Those types of over and above things, we want to recognize everyone. But we also want to show them this isn't just for just hourly individuals. You can have a long-term career with us. So we want to be able to promote from within culture. And I got to admit, when I think all the way back to my Disney days, that's the way it was before Michael Eisner and Frank Wells got there. And then ultimately when they got there were so many opportunities that they continued to promote from within, but they had to bring in outside folks. What I found is, I will call it a bit of, I won't say a failure, but an experiment to say, hey, let's bring in some other talent from outside the company. Nope, that doesn't work. What you've got to be able to do is show them what your true core values are, what you believe in, what your mission, what your vision is. And I'm very open with all my team members. I'll talk to anybody. We have open door policies with everyone. I want this younger crowd and generation to understand we've got a place for you. We want to be an employer of choice. And we can show franchisees how to be an employer of choice because we've gone through that process of listening to our team members, understanding what they really motivates them, really understand what's going to make them go a little bit further. You got to understand that just like a restaurant, that's probably their first job they're going to go work at. When they work at a theme park, a water park, or a family entertainment center like us, that's probably their first job. But if you show them an opportunity to grow, they don't know where they're going to go next. So they might be just, hey, they're working there during high school. Now they're working there during college as they're working on a degree. And being supportive and listening to them may open some unique opportunities to the industry. And what we've found is by being open to them, we found better and better support. I can say honestly, and one thing that feeds back to me that kind of tells me that is when I say review. When I took over this company, we had reviews that were low 2s and 3s, and now all are high 3s and all are high 4s. We're seeing them grow each month, and we're seeing people very interested and engaged in our parks. When you can do that for this younger crowd and the younger generation, they're going to go to your company versus someone else. Does that answer your question?
It totally answers my question, and you're bringing so many thoughts back while listening to you articulate this. I'm thinking of my friend Brian Whitman, who I asked you in an earlier conversation if you knew him. He's an old Disney employee who taught me a lot about how Disney does what they do by looking at the experience through the eyes of their primary consumers, not the parents, the kids. He used to tell me about the 2.5s. They called them the 2.5s. What does our park look like from the eyes of a 2.5? And so he told me all the things that Disney did and the way they appointed the parks were not just for the parents, but there was an experience going on at the eye level of a 2.5. Now, when you have employees that don't understand why while you're telling them perhaps to do something the way you want it done, and they don't connect with what you're telling them, there are a few words that I think can help foster that, which is you telling them, hey, you could be right about what you're thinking. You could be right, but let's rethink this, and then pose back to them what you're trying to couch as the position of the consumer. You're telling me what you think is right, employee, from your point of view, but let's look through the eyes of the 2.5 and what they see. Now, can we rethink your position? Oh, yeah, we can. Now you've had a conversation that puts your employee on your side of the fence instead of a line in the sand between you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And once you get them onto your side, they're great advocates for you. They're the validating point. Like we have with franchising, we like validation, right, from a potential franchise or ultimate franchisee. So the same thing goes with team members. If you can get them to validate, they bring their friend. We say, hey, do you know of anyone? We give referral points on that, or the nectar, which they redeem for gift cards, and they tickets to Disney and different things of that nature in Southern California, as well as out here in Florida. And they can validate what we do different. Now, of course, you can't get through to every single person. Not everyone buys in. But when you're not looking for the odd individuals, you want to try to get them out. You don't want them to be a cancer within it. But the more that you bring in that buys in with what you're doing, then the natural expression of smiles take place. They bend down and talk to the kids, not bend over, but get down to their level, onto a knee and talk to the kids. And I will say, we do have a lot of kids in our parks, but we actually have a lot more tweens, teens, young adults, and corporations. And I found that you give what the guests want. With what we've done in our parks, which are different, for your listeners, family entertainment centers have been around for a long time. There's over 6,000 of them nationwide. And that's everything from arcades to bowling alleys to trampoline parks, or to something like us, which I like to call us like a bit of a Dave and Buster's and steroids. Not only do we have the arcades, very large arcades, and redemption, but we have great restaurants and great food and beverage, but then we have the attractions, go-karts, miniature golf, batting cages, other attractions, laser tag, party rooms, things of that nature that's going to bring people in. But when you start going down this path, what are some of the things that you can do to make the guest feel better? Well, if you identify that your guest is a little bit older and they are bringing their kids in there, well, you got to give them some good foods. You're always going to have fan favorites in a family entertainment center. What is a fan favorite? That's hot dogs, hamburgers, pizzas, chicken fingers, and fries. These are the main staples that every family entertainment center pretty much sells, but you can make them taste good. You can do flatbreads, you can do salads, you can do flavor profiles, you can upgrade the bar menus to have specialty drinks. And of course, you're going to have stuff that the young kids are going to want, but you're also going to make sure that the adults want something when it's date night or party night or college night or what have you. You're going to have things for them to hang out there and really enjoy their time. Not only will you have it for young kids, but you'll have it for the older adults. But if you've got older adults, then when I say older adult parents, they like places to sit sometimes. So we created a Boomer's Backyard, which has Edison lights and heaters and TVs to watch games and things, and really nice grass areas, comfortable chairs and couches. Well, we did the same thing inside, called our Chill Zone, nice air conditioned area with all those types of amenities. And we've even seen, like you would have in a water park, a lot of people like their space. So we created cabanas for people to rent, and then we sell out almost every weekend in Boca Raton and Irvine, very city type of area that people spend the extra dollars for. But you think around what will make them stay there longer. If they stay there longer, what do they ultimately do, Stan? They spend more money. They spend more money and you control your costs, you're going to be that much more profitable.
No doubt. So in the time we have left, let's spend a minute talking about who it is that should be looking for an opportunity like that which you're presenting, and what do they need to bring with them in order for you to present what you offered back?
Sure. Great question. So you got different versions of what we've got. When you think about a family entertainment center business, it's not unlike a restaurant, a higher end, I won't say high end like fine dining restaurant, but expensive restaurant. I mean, restaurants can cost $3 to $5 million, $6 million, and of course up from that point, depending where we are with real estate and construction costs. But the point is, if you're going to spend that type of money for a restaurant, how about we keep them there a little bit longer? How about we do other things that's going to make them want to stay a little bit longer? And so where I think the ideal operator for our family entertainment centers really come from those that are already in a service-based business, a restaurant-type-based business. I think of the folks like Greg Flynn with Applebee's. I met him when I was at Applebee's, and he only had 20 units at the time, and now he's one of the largest franchisees of multiple concepts around the country. But you find there are several folks who are already in this business that make natural opportunities. In addition, this is a very specialized franchise type of business, having the gameplay with food and beverage. You can say, hey, there's Chuck E. Cheese, there's others out there like it, but frankly, they're on a younger demographic. An urban air is on a younger demographic. Chuck E. Cheese is like a 2 to 12-year-old. As I said earlier, on the trampoline parks, 2 to 12-year-old, usually. Adult like myself, I'm a marathon runner. I can't get on a trampoline longer than 15 minutes and I'll be exhausted. So adults are not really going to stay on that doing different things on trampolines. You take an urban air that's got trampolines and they're getting the go-karts, but their demographics are pretty much 8 to 13-year-olds. We're in an older demographic, so finding someone that understands, hey, this is kind of like a casual dining restaurant or a fast casual restaurant. That's who you're really bringing in as a demographic. They've already have the support structure. They already understand service. They already understand guests. They already understand team members. They understand the costs of controllables and non-controllables, similar rents. But also what we're looking at, instead of just building a restaurant like you might have in a food court at a mall, which are kind of dying, or a standalone restaurant, we see there's a ton of opportunities in all the closures that's taken place in retail. We're advocating going indoors. We've got 3 different prototypes, 20,000, 35,000, 50,000 square feet. And if you look at most of the closures since the pandemic, 6,000 of those big boxes fit that footprint around the country. They're not filling back up. Great opportunities with landlords to make great deals, not only for rents, but TI, and some of them will even put up some of the equipment. So there's a lot of great opportunities for those that see a bigger footprint that someone can go into. But when you have electric go-karts inside, and you have duck pin bowling and miniature golf and laser tag and large arcades of 100 units or karaoke rooms or electronic axe throwing, electronic darts, that's kind of fun. Now you have a full bar, 4-sided bar with a restaurant and some party room space. You've got the opportunity to grow top line a lot farther than a lot of the smaller folks out there that only focus on that younger demographic of 2 to 12-year-olds. As I shared earlier, a lot of them are only doing 1 to 5 million. I know one that's 66,000 square feet and only doing 2.8. 2.8 is one of my lowest locations I have in a farm town in California. One of my best locations is in the $8 to $9 million range with 30% weather. Going indoors, you don't have cancellation of weather, and I believe my top line is going to grow that much. Now, we're not as big as the big son of a guns that are out there that are a main event, Dave & Buster's, Malibu Jack's, or Scene 75, Andretti's. Those are very large facilities. I'm talking something smaller, 20 to 50,000 square feet, where they're 150, 200 though.
Have you given any thought to bringing branded restaurants inside of your parks?
Well, there used to be, when Boomers was first started, there was a McDonald's and several of them. They went to Johnny Rockets. It just didn't fit the culture of the folks we had coming in there. We have an eclectic menu that is I won't say it's like an Applebee's or Chili's or Fridays, but it's got a lot of those same similar elements, a better tasting quality product that you don't mind eating a meal there for.
Asked and answered. What about contact info, Tim?
Sure. Tim at boomers with an S, parks with an S.com. Tim at boomersparks.com.
All right, my audience knows that when they come to Franchise Today each week, they're coming to hear from accomplished people who have been there, done that, bona fides that are worthy of paying attention to and listening to and learning from. Seldom is the day I bring somebody on that hasn't sold their first franchise yet, but the first half of this interview explains why. So I'm confident, Tim, that you're going to do everything the right way, for the right reasons, with the right people, in the right places, at the right times, or you're just not going to do it. And that's why you're here today, and I appreciate you coming.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Stan. I totally agree to that sentiment. When you learn from some of the best in the industry, you just want to emulate what they've done.
Tim Murphy, CEO of Boomers Parks. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Stan.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Next week, I'm back with Tom Kraus, IFA board member and CEO of Donato's Pizza, and we'll be breaking some news during our conversation right here on Franchise Today. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.